forensic investigation has found that over 800 million rand oxygen plant tender for hospitals was irregular. Now, the Independent Development Trust, which is the agency responsible for rolling out infrastructure projects on behalf of the department, allegedly failed to conduct oversight in the tender process. Macpherson joining me in studio tonight. Minister, good evening, and thank you for your time. I think people are interested in consequence management more than anything. But before we get there, let's start with what irregularities were found here. Are you able to spell out at least three key issues, perhaps?
Yes, absolutely, and thanks for having me. The key thing to note is that this was not money that had been spent, or it wasn't South African taxpayers' money. It was money that had been given to the Department of Health by the Global Fund. So it's effectively donor funding that comes from other countries, other organizations that was going to pay for these oxygen plants. A memorandum of understanding was entered into between the IDT and the Department of Health, which clearly spelled out how the award process, what would be required in terms of licensing would be needed. And because also South African legislation is clear that you have to be SAPRA accredited to be able to build medical grade devices like oxygen plants. So what we have found through this independent investigation is that the companies that were, or at least the one that was awarded more than what they were accredited to be able to build. They were only accredited to build 200 million rands worth of construction. They were given a tender for 550 million rands. So that was the first irregularity. The second one was that they were not SAPRA accredited. In fact, they had used someone's license that they didn't even know. So that was fraudulent in itself. And then thirdly, there were people who were sitting on the bid adjudication committees that should not have been there in the first place. And fourthly, when we asked for the minutes and we asked for the recordings of all of these meetings that they had taken place, they simply weren't available, which of course is a massive red flag.
So there is an inflation of the tender here, because from 200 million to 500 million, today we speak about 800 million. What was the intention of all of these extra monies?
Well, it was obviously to award projects to people who couldn't deliver, wouldn't deliver. And we've seen in the bulking example that what they were awarded was 174% above what they should have got. The project inexplicably went from 200 million to 550 million, then to 800 million. No one can explain why that is, or where that approval was even sought from in the first place. And so it was by God's grace that we intervened when we did, so that we ensured that no donor money was actually spent on this project. So we saved it from being completely withdrawn. It's now been transferred by the Department of Health to the Development Bank of Southern Africa to implement. But of course now we must ensure that there is consequence management for those officials who oversaw this and were involved.
What about the people responsible here? There is a CEO at the IDT. You used her name at today's briefing when you were talking to members of the media, Tebogo Malaka. What consequences are possibly going to come her way and her team?
Well, that will be up to the board of the IDT. I do not run entities. I'm the shareholder on behalf of government. I have handed that report over to the board. I met with them to brief them. Now it's up to them to study that report and to institutionalize disciplinary processes against any official that was found to be involved in wrongdoing, or either flouted governance procedures, national treasury procedures. So they will then take that forward. We've also supplemented the Hawks investigation that is currently underway that had preceded our forensic investigation. So this will supplement a criminal investigation. But South Africans correctly demand accountability. That's why we wanted to be transparent with them today to say what we had found. And we will again be transparent on the conclusions of those disciplinary outcomes once the board has finalised them.
Oversight. Previously, the former Minister of Public Works, who is your deputy now, spoke out about this particular matter. He seemed to be washing his hands of this, including the former chairperson of the board of the IDT. And this is someone who used to be a politician. He now is in the private sector space. Did they play any role in all of what you have found through this PricewaterhouseCoopers investigation?
The Deputy Minister has played no role in this, and I'm absolutely confident. And it was only through investigative journalism did this come to light. So unless the whistle was blown, no one, certainly in the executive, would have known about what was going on. This was, in our view, a project that was put together through a number of officials to be awarded to companies that should not have received them in the first place, and to flout supply chain management regulations and requirements, and to award it to a company that didn't have the CIDB grading or didn't have a SAPRA license to begin with. Now, obviously, we started, once that was then publicly known, we asked the then board to provide us with information. They were unable to do so. They were cagey to do so. They first said that there was nothing to see, and then they admitted that actually, well, maybe there might have been a problem. So we do think that there was a failure in terms of fiduciary duties by the former board, but I'm absolutely convinced that the current board that we have now will take this matter up and not just deal with this particular issue, but to reform our supply chain and procurement processes. And I've also requested the DG to see how do we strengthen our own internal processes with regards to supply chain management, and how do we learn from this as a department as well.
Let's turn our attention to a conversation we've just had. The EPWP program, Expanded Public Works Program, specifically in the Majabeng municipality, that's in the Free State. A member of an organization, I think they call themselves the Forum for South Africa. They are absolutely livid with your decision to suspend this program because, in their words, they say, you're doing this because you have no idea what poverty is like. What's your response to that kind of comment?
Well, I'm sure that that was the same forum that took me to court around the IDT. So they're certainly not friends of mine. What I would say is that where there are allegations, and these are sustained allegations with evidence that I have seen, of people who have pay slips from the EPWP earning 40 and 50,000 rand, I would argue that they don't know what they are talking about, because that money, which has been going to these connected officials, actually robs the poorest of the poor from being able to access opportunity.
Can I pause you for a moment, Minister? Who is taking this money? You're saying people are earning upwards of 50,000 rand. If it's not community members who this EPWP is targeted to or meant for, then who is getting this money?
Well, the allegations that were first made by the City Press and then through the salary slips that I've seen are former councillors who don't have jobs, so they were given these opportunities, and also political office bearers in that municipality. Now, I think anyone who thinks that that's okay clearly doesn't understand South Africa in the slightest. EPWP is a critical program to support poverty alleviation, and that's why we must ensure that there is no abuse like we have seen. So we have correctly, and we've been applauded for doing so, suspended those payments until we are able to deal with the issue. And my team is already on the ground in the municipality, and we will have that report in a week or two. And once we have removed all of those officials, because I'm not certain that it's just those 4 or 5, I think it's a lot wider than that, we will then be able to resume the program. But we've also got to send a strong message to local government that we will not hesitate to act where abuse takes place in this program. It is far too important to allow that sort of abuse to take place.
Any timelines that you think could be given here in terms of reinstating this program? Because the pressure on you now is that you've got to reverse this decision as soon as possible. Otherwise, as the gentleman I was talking to earlier, they're going to take to the streets.
Well, it would be a week or two, I suspect. It won't be particularly long. It's not that people aren't getting salaries. It's just that we are not going to pay any further tranches until we actually understand what's going on. So I think he's entirely misdirected himself in manufacturing a false sense of outrage instead of actually condemning what's going on there, which is most unfortunate. And that's why one of the key reforms that we've wanted to see, clearly, is that we must take away the human hand of giving out these opportunities to people. And it must be done on a fair and equitable basis, that people don't have to show membership cards, they don't have to pay money, they don't have to, we've had instances where women have to offer their bodies for jobs. That's just not acceptable. And that's what we should be going after, instead of, the action that I've taken to demand accountability and to ensure that people are not stealing money effectively from EPWP recipients.
Another different topic, while I have you here, the George building collapse. That was absolutely tragic. Things have moved since then. Where are we in terms of holding people to account?
I must admit that that's one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through, and to see the pain of those families, and still, which they suffer today, it's traumatic. And that's why I'm committed to making sure that we get this right. On the 3rd of August, the appeal for the engineer will be up with the Engineering Council of South Africa. And once that appeal process has been completed, we will then also make that information available. But we've got to protect the process, because I don't want just people to be deregistered, clearly. People have to go to jail. 34 people can't die in this country during a building collapse and everyone just moves on as if it was just a terrible tragedy. Yeah. There was culpability and there was criminality every single step of the way. And I said, there were so many opportunities for people to sound the alarm and to stop that project. And people either weren't incentivized or weren't legally required to do so. And so we have to change that culture, which we will be doing through an amendment bill to the Council for the Built Environment, to ensure that we tighten up our legislation. We provide a hotline for people to be able to call in and say, I think there's a safety issue going on here, so that we can then go and intervene.
The number of foreign nationals that were involved in that project, were those people in South Africa legally?
I don't have an answer to that question, because I'm not in the Department of Labour and Employment. What I would say is that their families have also suffered a loss. And I don't think that we should be using the issue of illegal immigration, which is an important issue, to treat them any differently. They died, and there are possibilities that they may have been exploited because they were maybe in the country illegally, but that doesn't mean that they don't deserve justice and their families don't deserve justice.
Indeed, and that question specifically targeted at whoever the company was that was doing the construction work there. Finally, Minister, 40 million rand that is going to be directed towards what is now known as the Parliament Dome. You are rejecting, in fact, you're refusing to pour any money towards that. And so it raises the question about how parliamentary processes are going to work from here on, and what's the basis for refusing taxpayers' money, which you are protecting, I would think. So how is Parliament going to function?
So we have said to Parliament that we are not unreasonable players in this equation. We sought the dome out, we transported it, we put it up, we had an agreement with Parliament that we would contribute 6 million rand, they would contribute 5 million rand to the project. And for a number of reasons, we've never been able to fully fit it and fix it up to what they would like it to be, because the parliamentary schedule has been changing. Now, I mean, members have gone in there and they've said, there's an echo, or it's too breezy, or it's too hot, or too cold. And our view, and that we've said, is that it's never going to be as good as a permanent structure. And so, you can spend as much as you want, but you're only going to achieve marginal improvements. And is that money justified? And so, we can't take that money out of our baseline because it would be diverted from other projects. So the Speaker and I have met, and we've said that there needs to be a reworking of this, that 40 million rand to achieve, marginal improvements isn't worth it. I think the real issue is that when is Parliament going to be completed? And I've made my views known. It's not our project. We are not involved in the rebuilding of Parliament.
Who is?
Parliament is. So Parliament has taken on that responsibility. And I don't think that it's going to be done for some time. So we have to find a solution, but we have to find a solution that doesn't cost extraordinary amounts of money, that only achieve marginal increases over what members were used to in that dome.
Dean Macpherson, thank you very much for your time. The Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. Good to have you in studio.